Alright, we're going to try and build this part here. This is number 2, SolidWorks exercise number 2. We don't have any dimensions. Ideally, if I'm in design, I might not have any dimensions. I just need to build the shape, and I can worry about the exact constraints later. We can always modify and edit those values. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to work in quadrant number 4. The reason why I'm going to work in quadrant number 4 is I'm going to start here, and I'm going to create a line, a curve, and another curve, and another curve. And then I'm going to come straight up, and I'm going to come over, and I'm going to come over here. That's why I was in quadrant number 4. It was easier for me to stay outside the axis and stay in one quadrant. And then I will, before I do any auto constraints, I'm going to take those two elements and I am going to use the dialog box to set tangency so that does become tangent. I believe I had holes and corners, so I'm going to do a corner, highlight this, let's do 0.75, and then I'm going to do holes, and I'm going to do holes here. And what I'm going to do before I auto constrain it, I'm going to manually constrain to these points. I know that that top line is going to be my datum, so I'm going to dimension 2 points to help guide the auto constrain. Okay, with that done, I can highlight this whole thing, go to auto constrain, reference these elements here. I'm going to use those as my datums. Stack dimension it, say OK. Select this element and this element. Anchor those, and my part's done. It's fully constrained. So you see how quick and easy that was? Now, a couple things before I did the auto constrain, I made sure to dimension to points because I know CATIA has problems dimensioning to the points. Also, if I didn't have a tangency here as I was building the parts, I will have a problem here when I constrain it. It will not allow me to add constraints after the fact. So if I go through here and I do a corner and I put in these holes, whoops, that's definitely a hole I didn't want. Just got a little carried away there. Pop in these holes, and we go right to auto constrain. Reference these elements, stack dimension it. See how it didn't dimension to the center of the holes? And I don't have tangency here. It's got a bunch of weird stuff. It's dimensioning to all these tangents, which I didn't want. And that's when people say, oh, auto constraints doesn't work. And then I try and come back here and I set this tangency. I try and do this tangent. You're going to have a whole nightmare of a mess. And even if I didn't auto constrain, when people start constraining it and you don't do your geometrical constraints first, this becomes a giant headache. So I don't know how many people tried to create this and then constrain it. But again, if you watch my technique, whoops. One thing I did is I used profile and I created with a line. If you start with a line and you click and drag, a little box comes up. So when I let go, it goes into the corner mode. So I can click here and click and hold and drag a box and it switches to the corner mode. I want you to watch in my tool plate. It is currently set to line. When I let go, it switches it to this mode here, to tangent arc. Okay, so I'm going to kind of bend it like this, and then I'm going to click and drag, and I'll do something like this, I'll come up here. Notice that I got the tangent symbol there. So I won't have to set the tangency. I can come back here and hit corner these off. Put my holes in there. Again, you can always edit the size later. Before I auto constrain, I constrain to the points. Come back and auto constrain. The top line is my datum because it really don't have a horizontal line on the bottom to recognize as a datum, or it wouldn't make sense to be measuring everything off the bottom. So I measure from the top to the bottom and then we stack dimension it. I set these two as my datums. Oh, what's going on here? Oh, I hit my arrow, not my control button. I want to get the control button, set those as my datums. I don't know what I did. I did something weird here when I was constraining it. Okay, but that's the concept of building that shape. I built the whole shape. I constrained just these two dimensions. I made sure everything was tangent before I did the auto constrain, and everything worked out just fine. What I want to reiterate though, when you use profile, you start with a line. That is what it says in the tool palette. You're going to do a line. If I click and I click, the next movement is a line. If you try and come back and click and hold again, now you've got a mess going on in that corner. So you might have a line, a little line in another corner. So you got to be careful when you're doing that. See, it's in line right now. When I click and hold and drag and just let go, it switches it to the corner command. And then you can do your corner, come up something like this, and then another corner, something, I don't know, I'll do something different this time. Something like this, come straight up, highlight the top, corner that. I missed the tangency, so you got to come back in here and catch the tangents. In case you're not seeing that, I'm doing it in the constraints box. I'm adding tangent. I pop in all my holes. I put in the two constraints I know is going to be a headache if I don't. Let's auto constrain the rest and see how it goes. Stack dimension it. Oh, you know what I did? I didn't stay in the fourth quadrant. I locked up to this axis over here, going down here. Okay, so make sure you stay in quadrant number 4 when you're doing that. You don't ever want to crisscross with that axis because it tends to lock it up and give you headaches. Anyways, that's the concept of how I built this part over here. I want you to try out that and see if you can do it using the technique I just showed you.